Tech Exchange, designed to facilitate community discussions on the diverse impacts of AI. The topic tonight is a direct effort to fulfill our mission. Furthermore, this series marks the launch of our NYPL AI Literacy Initiative. This fall, we will be offering a variety of hands-on, practical, and educational AI classes available online, in person, and asynchronously. And now I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Errol King. Errol is a creative technologist, educator, and world builder, blending art, technology, and collective imagination. His career spans directing digital strategy for the largest U.S. union local and pioneering AI-driven creative projects at Google's Creative Lab, collaborating with artists like Lupe Fiasco and Bill T. Jones. As co-founder of Intergalactic XYZ, he uses world-building, speculative design, and immersive AI to help organizations and creators prototype futures. His practice is rooted in the belief that imagination is humanity's most valuable resource. Please welcome Errol King.
All right, good evening. Thank you for coming out. Very excited to be here. Let me get a little situated here. Thank you to the New York Public Library. This is, oh man, sorry, so a friend. It is super important that the New York Public Library like really holds this space and what we need in our communities, these conversations, this education, particularly in a time where things are rapidly changing. And so I'm really excited for this discourse. Also, thank you to Women Tech Exchange for inviting me to participate. The panel today on creativity, the future of intellectual property and creativity, from visual artists navigating the question of consent and ownership to musicians exploring synthetic voices and AI-assisted production, creators across industries are reckoning with what emerging AI tools mean for their craft and trade. We will examine the policy landscape, the platform decisions, the power dynamics shaping who benefits from this, and what are the possibilities. Join us for an honest and grounded conversation about art, authorship, and the future of creative rights in the age of AI. Our panel, awesome folks. It's been really great getting to know them as we've been preparing. All right, first, Adi Melentiano, founder of Afrotectopia, artist and researcher. Adi is an artist and researcher who investigates the culture as a cybernetic field. She has taught courses in new media, design, and critical theory across NYU, the Pratt Institute, Parsons, and Hunter College. Her work has been exhibited at MoMA, Sundance, and Dubai's Museum of the Future. She is the founder of Afrotectopia, a pioneering social institution cultivating Black imagination at the intersections of art, design, and technology. Please give a warm welcome to Adi. All right. Next up, Dr. Amadeus, CEO of Platinum Boy Music, Inc., and a multi-platinum record producer. So Amadeus, the CEO of Music, Inc., multi-platinum bad boy, hitman, record producer, Trey Songz, musical director, tour drummer, brand ambassador for Bel Air, Bamboo Rum, McQueen, and the Violet Fog, and he's a resident educator, motivational speaker. Amadeus has produced over 100 artists thus far, ranging from Jennifer Lopez, French Montana, Trey Songz, Chris Brown, 50 Cent, or 50 Cent more appropriately, Justin Bieber, Fabulous, T.I., and the catalog is staggering. He has produced and scored music for BET, VH1, Burger King, Sprite, EA Sports, ESPN, and his relentless work ethic has set him apart from many of his other peers in the industry. In addition to being considered a super producer, Amadeus is also a professional drummer and music director at Atlantic Records, multi-platinum recording artist Trey Songz. Amadeus is truly passionate about giving back, motivating and inspiring people to believe in themselves, their dreams, and doing whatever it takes in a positive manner to see their dreams become a reality. This man is highly accomplished. Give it a warm welcome to Dr. Amadeus. Sorry, man. I tried. All right. Vicky Wen, Head of Commercial Emerging Companies at Wilson Sonsini. So she's based in the New York firm New York office. She spearheads the technology transactions teamwork on behalf of early stage companies. She counsels. Sorry, getting myself together. Oh my God. Oh, page. Sorry. She counsels innovative technology companies and investors on a wide range of legal needs, including company formation, go-to-market strategy, corporate and strategic partnering, commercial contracts, advertising and promotions, M&A, financing, and other legal and business matters. She is a frequent speaker on intellectual property and technology issues for emerging companies, and is an active participant in events and initiatives for founders, investors, and lawyers from all backgrounds. Please give a warm welcome to Vicky Wen. All right. So apologies if I chopped up any of those bios. I was doing my best to keep up. Also, I just want to get a sense in the audience of who's here today. If you are currently actively using AI in some way, raise your hand boldly. Okay. Thank you. If you consider yourself a creative or an artist, raise your hand. Oh, okay. All right, that's good. That's good. If you work in music or are in music production, in that sense, raise your hands. Okay, cool. If you're in the legal space, raise your hand. All right, there you go. All right, well. So been looking forward to today's conversation. I think it all starts with creativity, and kind of wanted to start from there before we dive into AI, before we dive into sort of like the implications of the current. Just want to get a sense for where it all begins, which is human creativity. So Adi, an artist, researcher, creative, just tell us a little bit about your creative process and the type of work that you do.
I have always loved art since a kid, and have always explored a lot of different tools and mediums, very agnostic to material or technology or mediums. And I find that my approach to it is, for one, it's a lot of kind of like researching and then turning that into something for people to experience. So it really starts off with theory or ideas, and then it becomes a way for me to, especially as an educator and a child of educators, I really like to use technology to give a message and teach people something. It's also very expressive of just bringing the inside out. Maybe leave it there.
All right, awesome. Dr. Amadeus, tell us about your creative process and practice.
So for me, as a musician, as a music producer, I've always created from the heart. What do I feel? What are the emotions that I'm kind of feeling and going through at the moment? And I honestly feel that's what helped with my longevity as well, right? Where sometimes creatives produce or create based off of what's happening or what's going on or following trends or following sounds and kind of gravitating towards that because of the success of that. But I've always been kind of a rebel in wanting to do my own thing and create from feelings, so that when, if I create a song, if I create a track, if I create an idea and I share that with a J-Lo, if I share that with a Chris Brown, they can feel the emotions that I've put into that particular track, that particular beat, and can kind of go off of that and create, a song or a melody or a lyric that can capture the emotions that I've felt organically, and they can kind of translate that into a song. So that's what I've always approached creativity. Now on the musician side, in regards to the touring, same thing, a feeling, surrounding myself with musicians and band members that I've been performing with all my life. So there's a love, there's a knowing of one another, there's a trusting of one another to be able to, say something musically without saying anything. Me giving eye contact or me making gestures, and they can kind of feel and know the direction that I would want to go in musically without me saying a word. So that's always been my process, just creating from feeling, emotion.
very, very human, relationally oriented. Vicky, we're really just trying to touch on passion. Obviously, coming in, legal law is obviously a creative field. Rules, arguments, and whatnot. Tell us about sort of like how you found your way into maybe the space of innovation, technology, and law, and sort of how you see that as a part of your own practice.
Okay. Oh no, the lawyer on a creative panel. Like, this is a nightmare of mine somewhere. But actually, to be honest, I came into law like by way of wanting to pursue like more like traditionally creative endeavors. I actually thought when I was growing up I was going to be a fashion journalist. I really like to read. I really like to write. I really like to it was either gonna be fashion or lifestyle. I really wanted to like talk to people and hear their stories. And then, I took a magazine writing class and got cold feet after we had a speaker come in and she was like, "You can't just graduate and go to Vogue." And I was like, "Wait, what?" She's like, "No, you have to like spend many years just like writing about whatever is out there." And my silly self, who is not great at math and probably is why I'm a lawyer, was like, "Oh my God, to spend 3 years building my portfolio, I should go to law school," which is also 3 years long, by the way. So like that didn't really work. And it's funny because like one of my friends who was doing firm photography for my very first the first firm I was at, we were in Times Square and it was like right near the Condé Nast building and right near like the New York Times building. And he was like, "Oh, you like almost got to your dream. Like you can see your dream out the window." And I was like, "Okay, yes." But like all that to be said, like what kind of started drawing me into law was like really kind of like appreciating the power of language, right? And like really wanting to continue a career path where I can be like very intentional and very impactful with what I'm writing. And so my particular practice has a lot to do with like commercial contract drafting, which might not have been like the type of writing that I thought I was going to do when I was like a lot younger, but it's something that like is really meaningful for my clients if I get it right, right? And I think that like in particular, taking that and working with like entrepreneurs and like innovative companies, like really cutting edge tech, the part of me that wanted to be a journalist and like wanted to hear people's stories and like the like inquisitiveness about like what they're working on. And like, my clients teach me so much because when they come up with a new technology, it's impossible to know everything, right? And founders love to talk about what they're working on. And I think that like that skill set that was like a person who thought I was going to interview people about a different kind of story has really served me really well in working with these like entrepreneurs. And then, when you have companies who are working in like spaces that are like, it's such a cliche, but like if they're out of the box, right? Like these companies are trying to do things that have not been done before, that are don't fit into like our like current like legal regimes. You're also trying to find solutions that are like out of the box. You have to be creative about how to approach things. It's never just, no, you can't do that. It's always like, what are your goals and how are we going to figure out a way to get you as close to your goals without putting you in risk. And I think that takes a lot of like a creativity from a problem solving aspect that like maybe is not like what I would have thought of as traditional creativity, but I think that is something I get to exercise a lot.
So, love this. This sets the stage so you understand who we're dealing with here, which is beautiful to see the passion in the craft. I think where we're going next is where obviously this is a conversation about creativity in the age of AI. Lots has changed. Language, large language models, right? Like words matter, shaping space. We have image models that have come out. Images can be generated at will for the first time in all various styles. And then we have video model. Like there are a whole new set of tools that are changing the way that people are expressing creativity. So I want to kind of start to pass the ball around a little bit and talk about ways in which that has changed, not changed, informed, or led to explorations. I guess start with you, Adi. Maybe like in the age of AI, how has that affected your creative practice? And maybe what are some possibilities and pitfalls that you've explored?
Well, in the beginning part of exploring with generative AI, I was very interested in, as many of us, we were all just trying to understand it, what it was doing. So one thing that I did was I started explored this practice that I call computational anthropology, which is a field that already exists, but I defined it in a different way of reverse engineering the machine's gaze. So how has the machine, synonymous with computation, the internet, all of that, how is that observed all the ways that we've existed in the world? And how can it reveal our behavior back to us? And so I would do things like upload a headshot of myself, and then I would prompt it with single adjective attributes like Ghanaian or smart or poor or all these different identities, and see how it would change my face in relation to that word, surfacing the ways our behaviors, and trying to create a very concise way to explore that. So that was a really nice way to understand technology as really a mirror to people and society and the ways that we've existed. I've also used it very creatively, and I saw this paper that refers to how these tools, I think many people, artists especially, were very threatened by it because it felt like it's pretty much taking away their job and their craft, something that people have been working for decades on, a style that they've been rendering. But it also says in this paper that really these tools supercharge your capabilities. So it's not necessarily going to wipe a craft out. It's also something where if you spent a long time building these skills, it can help you elevate it even further. So that's something I've been exploring, whether it's generating media or exploring other ways to help use my craft. One thing that has been really interesting to watch the landscape grow is for the past 3 years, I've been during this new media festival where people all over the world are contributing their work. And so to watch the ways that we reward entries and what people are submitting in this age and in the past 3 years has been really revealing of what AI means to the creative industry. And in 2023, it was a bunch of submissions of people just excited to use AI. So we were all impressed by whatever people were doing. It looked amazing. Everyone could create really great work. And it was kind of, okay, who's using it well? Who's exciting at the time? The next year, it wasn't so much of it wasn't enough just to use it. It was more of what's the concept? Like, what are you saying? How is it pushing the craft? It's not just using it. Like, how are you a master of the craft almost? This past year, it's not even impressive to see people use AI. I think we're all just so exhausted, and many of the ideas that were being explored 2 years ago feels very outdated. So it's been really interesting to see how quickly the landscape has changed and what the metric for quality is. But in this year, it's been more of, it's actually most impressive when we don't even know that you're using AI. Like, it's not an AI project. It's actually that you've somehow put it inside of the work and it's not the headline. So it's been a really interesting space to see the ways that creativity is kind of what the metric for quality is and being a master at it over these past 3 years.
I wonder if some part of that is also because there's more guidance around what AI created work is protectable under copyright law. And I'll make sure to bring it up at some point, but I wonder as people get more clarity on, like, you can't get copyright registration for something where the AI is like actually the author and actually the creator, if that has disincentivized people to use that, because now you're making something that did not have the level of protection that it would have had you had a human make it. So, I mean, I just wonder if that's like some part of it.
Right now, it doesn't seem like it, because people are recreating. There was one piece that was submitted that was recreating a video from the NRA, like a speaker that was like archival footage, and he kind of extended it with AI. In the first year, we had someone recreate films that were actually like copyright clearly protected. So right now, I think it's so far ahead that they're not even worried about that, and they're still submitting it.
Interesting.
It kind of takes remixing to a whole other level, right? In some senses, because you can take something as obscure as, and then just like inject and expand upon that and figure out how you want to turn that upside down, which is the work of the artist, right? The work of the artist is to be the mirror, right? So to take something that exists in the zeitgeist anthropologically and then kind of turn it and hand it back could be provocative, and it actually borrows from saying, you know what, I'm actually going to boldly take. It's kind of fascinating. To the notion around remixing, AI has been out making, sound music for a little bit. Tell us about your approach. Are you using it? Are you not using it? Who's using it around you? And like, how's that shaping music production?
So for me, Errol, I've always been pretty stubborn when it comes to technology, right? I've been producing for over 25 plus years, prior to laptops and softwares and DAWs, right, where I actually had drum machines and actual keyboard setups. And, you would walk into a studio when we're in a session and see drum machines set up with like 10 keyboards all plugged into one another, MIDI'd into one another. So I come from that, right? And I've accomplished so much with that, and it just was an organic thing for me as you have musicians and live musicians playing, right? So then when we kind of went towards technology and laptops and softwares, I kind of like didn't want to go that route because I'm like, hey, I'm over here, I see what's going on, but I'm gonna stay over here. So just to see where we are today, it's really impressive. I would say it's pretty impressive. Now, I'm still that stubborn individual where I have not personally tapped into AI, but I have fellow musicians, my engineers that I work alongside that has tapped into AI when it comes to the mixing and when it comes to the mastering of songs. So I kind of let them do their thing. But I also, it's funny that I'm here. I did a podcast interview, and there was a young gentleman that's a producer that ran the studio, and the AI conversation came up in that session. And he's a lot younger than me, and he had so much knowledge and wisdom on it. And he said, you know what you can use AI for, Amadeus? You know how you would go record shopping and you would go digging, and this is, which I loved, where I would spend hours upon hours just digging and going through records and finding out the parts that I would love to sample and listening to drums. He goes, well, you can just say, hey, I'm looking for an Amadeus drum pattern with a Rick Ross song that, and he said, basically you can tell it the vibe of what you're looking for in the sample, and it can create that. And in that moment, I went from to really. And that was a moment, right? And I'm like, wow. But now here's the issue for me, and we've had this conversation prior to the panel. I like the process. I love the process of going to a record store, having no idea on what you're going to hear, putting the needle on the record and going through an album, not hearing nothing and going through another album and then like, what is this? Right? Versus me saying, hey, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. That's the challenge that I have as a creative, right? And then on another note, what that does is, for me, the technology thing kind of allowed people that necessarily didn't have the love and passion for creating and producing and being musicians. Now, all of a sudden, they want to be that because of it being accessible. Right? When I got my first drum machine, which is the MPC 2000 XL by Akai, you got the drum machine and it was a sampler and it was $1,300. I had to save for that, right? And it came with no sounds, none. And I didn't know that until after I got it. Fast forward to software, Pro Tools, Logic, where you'll go buy Logic and you'll spend $500 and then you get Logic and it's in your computer, and now you have access to 5,000 sounds. Right? So now the person that didn't even have a dream or aspiration of wanting to be a musician and a producer and go, really? I can spend $500, get this software, and now have 5,000 sounds that's basically given to me versus me going and digging and creating my own sounds and figuring out my life as a musician and producer. And so that's my issue when it comes to where we are from a technology standpoint. Adi said something really amazing. She said, and I'm probably gonna get this wrong, Ari, so correct me, please. In 2003, everybody was excited about AI, and it was everything was going and was really good. And then as the years go by, it was just like, everybody's doing it, and it's just not the same effect. And it goes back to what I said originally. My opinion, where's the feeling? Where's the emotion? That's why records that I've created have longevity. That's why records that I've created are timeless, because it's not just something that here, just do this. There's a feeling and there's an emotion behind it, which allows that song to live and last forever. And as we speak of that, big shout out to Michael Jackson, as the movie is out right now, and you got to see how well, actually, I don't want to say that because I don't know if anybody did not get to see the movie, so I'm going to be quiet. But go see the movie Michael Jackson.
Well, no spoilers. I want to go back to something you said in the middle. where you're like, they said, give me an Amadeus beat. Now, I don't know what the machine knows about me or things that I've made, but I would imagine that that's a feeling when you get a machine that produces something in your style. How did you, I mean, how did you feel about that? Did you feel like you were being honored? Did you feel like you were like, dang, now anybody can produce it? Like, where does that sit? And then did you also feel, man, somebody should pay me, right? We're gonna give them should I be? It's like, how did that land for you?
That's a great question. I've always, as a musician, wanted to be sampled. I've sampled so many great artists and songwriters and producers, from Marvin Gaye to, artists that we have no idea who they are, right? That because I'm digging. So to be sampled, I think, would be an honor, right? But with being sampled, you have to holler at me. You have to holler at my publisher. You have to get permission. There's going to be a fee. There's going to be something that I'm asking of, publishing wise, right, in order for you to do so. Now, when we talk of AI and mentioning, hey, I want an Amadeus driven beat with such and such and such, so you have millions of people that's doing it around the world. And this has not been something that's kind of like agreed to or agreed upon, in which there's no real protection from me creatively. Now is an issue. Because now what's something that I've created that is authentically me is now able to be replicated without my permission, without my blessing, without me signing off on. So honored, but then at the same time, from a business lens, it can definitely be an issue.
So, as I'm thinking about this, there are many parties that intersect at this juncture. I'm curious. We could load that into the back of the minds. I'm curious how you've been in this game for a bit. Looking at, you talked about the pre-GPT AI era of machine learning models and folks. How has the conversation changed for you in terms of like folks, representation from the creative side and/or even from the companies that are trying to push these things forward? I'm curious, like, what your inboxes or your conversations are looking like.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is as good a time as any for me to say anything I say is in my personal capacity and does not represent anything that my firm is saying. So thank you for letting me get that out of the way. My inbox, I've been offline for like 3 hours. I have no idea what my inbox looks like. I'm sure it's
Good for
really
you.
scary.
Good for you.
I know it's going to be bad. But if I had to guess, on our side, because we work with a lot of like tech companies, they're kind of looking at it from, I think there's like 3 buckets of what I'm seeing. One, and probably the most major one, is like, how do we make our company, like, we want to be AI for blank. And it reminds me of like back in the day when everyone wanted to be like Uber for something, or like, I want to be X for Y. Sometimes to the point where it didn't make sense, right? Like, why do you need, like, what do you mean you're going to be like an Uber for toothbrushes, or like Warby Parker for pets? I mean, those are not real business decisions, but like, those are the kind of things we were hearing. Because people just wanted to like do like the hot thing, or like, we were talking about, there was like the NFT boom and everyone had to figure out like how to put an NFT into their business plan somehow. And now that's what we're seeing with AI. Everyone wants to say like, they just want to find a use for AI. And so when they come to us, that, it's always, AI plus industry or use case. What do I do? And then, from our point of view, we have to run checks on like, well, are you in an industry that has special requirements, right? Like, are there legal, ethical concerns? Like, there's a lot of concern around using AI to make like certain types of decisions if you're doing it without a human in the loop, for example. Things that could really affect somebody's, like, let's say, like application for job, or those like levels of decision making. Is that something that we need to make sure that we're doing, like walking you through what extra checks and balances you need to have, right? And like, like, how are they going to commercialize? A lot of times people come to us and they have these ideas and they're not even really sure, like, who they're going to charge or like what that looks like. It's really just kind of like these like ingredients. And so we're kind of shepherding clients through that process of like all the things they might need to know to get off the ground, from like just like, X with like plus AI. And I think the other thing is companies feeling the pressure, as I think a lot of companies are doing, like, outside of my client base, of like using AI, right? Their exec teams want them to use AI. They think it's going to make things more efficient. But for a company where your key asset is your technology, and you have an engineer team that wants to use a coding tool, like, what does that look like? What are the parameters that have to be put in place when you're talking about something that, maybe, probably, very likely does not have copyright protection, right? And so, like, what does that mean? And, walking them through kind of running that balance between the, real business benefit of doing something efficiently. These are early stage clients, they are trying to do things quickly and they're trying to do things to be first to market. And so, like, telling them that you can't use AI at all, you can't use these coding tools at all, is a lot of times out of the question. But walking them through kind of thinking about separating, like, hey, is this something that you really need IP protection for, or is this something that you can afford to take that risk in order to do something or approach it from a way that's more efficient. So, like, really making sure people are thoughtful. A lot of, there's buzzwords from like, oh, do we need to have an AI policy? What does that look like? Walking them through that process. Using AI to maybe, I don't know, write an email internally or something like that. Very different from using AI to build your entire like platform, right? And you have people who are like vibe coding now and like trying to figure out like, hey, at what limit should you impose on when you want to do that, and maybe it's fine, and maybe that is not what is going to be your market differentiator. Maybe that's not going to be what you really need, but having intentionality around it, having thoughtfulness, and so what you're getting into. That's a big part of it. We have investors who really want to invest in AI companies, and they want their companies to use AI, and then on the other hand, will sometimes come back and be like, okay, well, now we're worried about it. So, like, what do we need to look into? So you see a lot of that, right? There's like a lot of pressure, a lot of excitement around AI and tech right now. But there's also, I think, apprehension about like what some of the repercussions could be or the consequences. And I think there's just like a lot of stuff out there. So helping people sift through that. And I think even internally, I guess, as the last bucket is like, what do we want to do as a firm to use AI tools, right? We are a tech firm. We want to keep things efficient for our clients, but we also have ethical requirements about how we deploy things and like, what we're doing, like how we have to protect client data, the work product that we put out. And so like, we're really trying to make sure like, we're doing that in a way that makes sense. To Dr. Amadeus' point, you have a bunch of us who like still like to take handwritten notes, and don't even like to like type things. Don't want to write on an iPad. And so people have their own processes and like their own ways to engage with like what we're doing. And so trying to figure out like how you want to walk that balance in a way that kind of like honors like everybody's like best way of like, going through their own practice.
So it seems like the frameworks that existed are like having to think through a whole lot of new set of parameters. There are also some, I would imagine, some precedent-setting landmark lawsuits about, image generation, companies that have provided image generation, et cetera, like without predicting how this is going to play out. Like, how are you seeing some of the dynamics and the arguments that are being made and some of the gamesmanship that's like playing out there?
Yeah, I feel like this panel might be a very different panel in like a year or two because so much is happening like last year and this year. The AI lawsuits, a lot of them are really, really early. I think some of it was just like trying to figure out what was going to survive, like the motion to dismiss phase and kind of carry on. I think a lot of stuff is supposed to be coming up this year. So we might have some more like, more certainty around how that's going to shake out. But so far, I would say like, when we say AI, there's like so much like, and that's also like I have a client, some of my client base is like we've been doing machine learning forever, and like no one really cared that much, and now that it's called like AI, we're tying it's generative AI, like everyone is excited about it. So I do have like these companies who are really at the forefront, but because like the terminology wasn't out there, the marketing wasn't out there, like they feel like maybe they're not getting the same amount of love. But that's to say like right now like there's a lot going on. I would say like the main thing that we're talking about with AI lawsuits, or what people are really focused on, are lawsuits that have to do with training data, right? The use of copyrighted work to train these like LLM models. And so like I think kind of taking a couple steps back on like copyright law, I'm not sure like how many people are familiar with the basics. It gives the owner of the copyright certain exclusive rights like reproduction, publicly perform, publicly display, making derivative works, forgetting something. Distribution, I think. So those are things as a copyright owner that you should be able to do and not someone else, right? And so a lot of the AI lawsuits or the training data lawsuits on the plaintiff sides, they're bringing claims that like you are mostly around reproducing, like you are copying our copyrighted work for training purposes without our permission. And because we own this copyright, like that, in the absence of a license or a defense, if you are exercising the rights that a copyright owner has, that would be an infringement. And so I'm going to read, I think, 2 quotes because I think that it kind of sums up how a lot of the plaintiffs in the space are seeing it. And this is from like the U.S. Copyright Office. They did like a massive like 3-part report on the different parts of AI, the last of which was generative AI. And I think it's still like in draft, but people were kind of clamoring for it, so they released in a draft form. So the Copyright Alliance said, widespread ingestion harms creators by destroying the licensing markets and flooding market with low-quality substitutes. And then the Association of American Publishers compared it to compelling creators to subsidize their competition. So I think those two like kind of capture at least like 2 major themes of why like copyright holders who are bringing these lawsuits are so upset, like, or what they are upset about. And so, so yeah, the right that they are claiming is being infringed is the right of reproduction or copying, because I think that there's some understanding that some copying is happening somewhere there. Even that is in dispute. You'll have like certain companies who say we're not really copying because we're not doing A, B, and C, but and sometimes it's hard to figure out like where, at what stage the copying is happening. But I think that there's like some understanding that the data must be copied at some point, and so that's like the right that they're claiming is infringing. There's also like some smaller amount of arguments around derivative works, right? Is kind of the creation of these like model weights to the extent that they contain any of the original copyrighted work, is that like creating a derivative work that only the copyright holder, it's like themselves are supposed to be able to do. So I would say like those are like 2 of like the ones that I would see most frequently. They're probably people will bring lawsuits and have a lot of different other little arguments, but those are like the ones I find really kind of rising to the top. On the defendant side, these a lot of times companies who are like AI developers, their arguments are, well, if you had us pay everybody for licensing, like to license all of this, the technology would just be impossible. There's so many works that have to go into producing a good LLM. You're going to actually just destroy the technology, and the technology has benefits. Or you're going to, an interesting argument I also thought was like, or if you do this, you are going to crush competition because only the largest companies with the best resources will be able to do this. So smaller like LLMs and smaller AI systems will not be able to emerge to kind of compete with these larger ones. And so that is their argument. And what they are really hinging a lot of their defenses on, a lot of the lawsuits out right now, is the fair use defense, which is this kind of judge-made doctrine that provides an affirmative defense to infringement claims. So, someone's using something, they don't have a license, they're an infringer, but if they're using it for fair use, then it's a defense to that. And the defendant does have to prove it, or they bear the burden of proof to do so. And fair use, the purpose behind it is to allow protection of the initial work, but so people can still build off of it. For purposes like criticism, being able to do news reporting. Like if you imagine, like if someone was able to lock down like a news article and call it, like wouldn't let anyone else re-report it, then you might not be disseminating news as quickly or as you want to. For educational purposes, right? So there are a lot of really valuable uses that are protected by the fair use doctrine. And so it looks at 4 factors. One is the purpose and the character of the use. One is the amount of the original work that is being used. One is the nature of the work, right? Is it more factual? Is it more expressive? And the last one is the effects on the market. And so a lot of times these like AI developers are really kind of digging into that first use, and by saying that it is a different use because it's transformative. What we are doing is very different from what the original work is. We are not just taking a book to copy it to make another book. We're taking it and we are analyzing it from like a data perspective to train something. And so that is a very different thing. And therefore, it is not really going to have the same effect on the market. It's not really going to be a replacement because it's data and it's not that original work. And that is the argument that they've been making. And this is what the courts are largely trying to figure out, is like where we are with like that, and it's very, fair use is very case by case. They really look and they balance all the factors. So like no one factor, even though this is the one that has been like the focus of a lot of lawsuits, no one factor is like deemed like, completely definitive. So like that's what we're trying to see shaking out. It is like interesting. So like even though they say it's highly transformative, and the other argument that I think is going to be an interesting thing to watch for a while is a lot of like the AI developers are saying, well, we're not displacing the market for the original work because the original work is this book. And no, we're not changing the fact that someone's going to buy that particular book. And a lot of copyright holders who are bringing these lawsuits are saying, no, you should not be looking at the market for this one book that I wrote. You should be considering about my whole body of work, right? And even though traditionally the idea is like, if you have like a parody of like a song or a parody of a book, like, is it going to stop someone from buying that first book? No, because that parody is something different, right? And so that was the way that was kind of looked at, I think, more traditionally. But here, I think a lot of plaintiffs are trying to say like, it's not that. It's not my original book. It's the fact that now you're making things in the style of my music. You're making things in the style of my art, and therefore you are harming my market. You're harming my ability to be able to sell other works into the market. And so I think that's like the indirect substitution, the market dilution theory. It's new. I think courts are like open to hearing about it, but unfortunately, like no one's really brought like evidence that has been successful quite yet. So I think that might be a place where we're going to try to see some movement. It's like how are courts going to look at that like last factor of like market effect.
Yeah. Just clocking this, you just got about at least $4,000 worth of free legal analysis right here. Thank you for your generosity. I mean, there was so much there. Yo. So it's interesting. I feel like a large part of this is like pushing on the institutions that can afford to protect, or thinking about people that are like actively kind of like, hey, I want to protect that, right? There's that class. Adi, thinking about your way of like almost subversively going into the back of the mind of the machine and seeing what it sees, and then seeing style and being pulled. And there are many artist traditions and vibes and styles from all over the world that are not going to maybe have as much a say about how they're protecting their properties, their styles, their arts. And so, the question here is, the artists most vulnerable to AI appropriation are those from communities whose work has been historically appropriated anyway. Artists of color, indigenous artists from the global south. Is AI making an old problem worse, or is it sort of generating a new form of harm? What are your yeah, it's a biggie. Sorry. I'm trying to go to the other side of it, right? Because there's so many people who are left out of that discourse, and it's just like, yeah, we're just gonna use that and push a thing out. And in some senses, as I think about it too, there is an honor in that. But it also, that honor comes with paying homage when you, right? Like you steal, but you also you wink at it, so you can say, "Hey, I got this," and that lineage is honored and brought forth. Yeah, just thinking about your work and how what's coming up for you in relationship to that.
I mean, it's very complicated. Clearly, I think it's really because we're at the forefront of ethics in so many ways. So what was okay on one platform is not okay in this situation. So on Instagram, you can repost people's stuff, or you can take a video of you pointing at somebody else's video and they're commenting on something, and that's okay because you're still pointing directly at the artist. But with this, it's different in that it's a tech company that has access to the style and artistry of different people, and they're monetarily benefiting from the craft of someone else. So I think it's really about power distribution of who has power in that moment and who is exploiting and extracting and who is benefiting. And oftentimes in those kind of situations, it's yet again not the people that are creating. And it's also a space that I've been thinking about a lot too, because I've been really grappling with how I want to engage with all of this in general. And I think I'm feeling more complicated than I did a few years ago. Of before, I was more of like, okay, let's get in. And I'm saying let's as like Black people, let's get in. We are often excluded. How do we make sure that we have a presence and we're getting good at this and we're not getting left behind? But now I'm more of maybe let's be a little bit more careful. Maybe let's think about how we're helping these tools grow and get better, because at the end of the day, we're still not the ones that are going to necessarily benefit in the ways that other people are. So it's more of how good do we want to get this to be? But there's also a lot of stuff that's online that people have already given up of their work that is already extractable, and tools can build off of that. So it's complicated. I think I'm in a space where it's more of I'm just there now. It's again like this updating of ethics of now that this is here, how do I want to share to these tools and to the internet and those sorts of things. So yeah, I couldn't even give an answer. I think it's more of we all are just in the middle of something really, really complicated, and we kind of just have to move slowly and figure things out step by step.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw you move a little bit on that.
Adi
So.
really said something key. One of the greatest things, and I'll speak for me, of course, as a musician, as a producer, one of the most important things is your credits, right? If you've created something and no one know you've done that, like how do you really excel? How do you really succeed? There's times where you may have created works and have not been compensated, or not have been compensated properly, but you've leaned on the fact that you were credited. So as it's released to the world and viewed and listened to by millions of people, it comes back to you being the creator of that. And that's one of the cool things about sampling, right? Where when you sampled someone, and I know that I'm telling my age, but I used to love opening album credits and CDs and looking at all of the creators and writers and the pictures that was in the albums. Like I wouldn't listen to a CD or a cassette tape until I've done that, just to appreciate all of the creators involved and being excited. Like, okay, Timbaland made that one. Okay, the Neptunes did that. Okay, such and such wrote that. Oh, I can't wait to get to song number 7, right? But when you sampled someone, you had to include that information. This was sampled, whatever this record is, sampled by Barry White, and you saw Barry White's name and the label and the writers and the producers that were all a part of the song. Everyone was credited, right? So when you brought up that point to Adi, it's like, I don't know how I feel about that, because you create something. You create something from your heart and soul, right? You share that with the world. I can just come along and say, hey, I really like that too, and search you up, and I don't know how it absolutely works, but type in your name and type in the record that I love of yours that you've made, And now I have that, right? And let's think about whoever your favorite artist is. Prior to technology being where it is today, they were in the studio for hours. We were in the studio for hours, recording live. Everything was live. Drums, guitars, keys, bass. If someone messed up, stop, run the tape back, do it again. Not delete. No, everybody has to play the entire song over again. That was probably 15 minutes. Just because that one mistake, right? So this is people's blood, sweat, and tears that they went into the studio and created and made. And that's why when we speak of heart, just feeling and emotion, like there's songs that were written that were from true situations, real stories, real experiences in life, right? So I love where technology is. But it's nothing, in my opinion. I don't care if I'm the only one and no one's like, okay, I hate what he's saying. It's something about a feeling, man. It's something about how that person felt creating it and how it made you feel when you heard it. And look, think of whoever you love. Think about, let's stop a moment and think about whatever your favorite song is from that artist that you absolutely love and adore. And just pause and think about what it took to create that song and what they had to do and the sacrifices they had to make in order to make that song over and over and over again, just to get it as perfect as it can possibly be so that you can enjoy that record. You know, so I love this conversation. I've learned so much from everyone up here. And I'm a sponge, just like you guys, I'm a sponge too, because at the end of the day, we live and we learn something new each and every single day. And I just love, honestly, I do love where technology is. I know I'm stubborn, but I can't sit here and not say I don't love where we are in life, where anyone, anywhere, any ethnicity can achieve something or do something or be a part of something or create something. I love that.
I want to do a quick time check. And we're good. Should we go into QA? I have one more question that I want to throw out based on this. Okay, excellent. Okay. So I'm kind of taking this all in, and what's interesting is there's notions of relationality. And art, we were talking about an essay that you recently wrote, and it's like, well, if that gets put in, onto the internet, it goes into the ecosystem, and then that will then sort of proliferate into all of the billions of ways. But also that essay itself represents other people's time and efforts and books that you put in. And in some senses, that artifact that you made is an expression of boundless time to some extent, right? And then I'm thinking about your song, and each of those artists learning that instrument over a lifetime, getting together in that moment, recording, mastering, right? All of those steps and how much, and what seems to be happening is that time has kind of folded in. A single person can, without knowing those skills, express the thing instantly and by themselves.
Yes.
And there's something about that sort of like condensing of the human experience that I'm curious about. And so, in our preliminary questions, we have a bunch of people who are tinkering with AI and many people who raise their hand as creative. I'll open this up to however you want to take it with all that in the gumbo. What should be, or what is the possibility? Because we've gone from creativity down into like legal, but we're in the realm of ethic now. Mm-hmm. What is the ethic of the creative, the AI-powered creative? What are the things that we should be thinking about just as we go forward, using the tools creatively to make images, to build business, to like, what are just some questions that we may want to ponder as we endeavor? And maybe just leave folks with that, like a question that you leave open-ended, a mystery of sorts, and then we can open it up to Q&A.
Can I answer that from like a legal perspective
Hey, listen,
first?
yeah, sure.
Before, again, like it's going to be the least interesting part, but maybe people will find it helpful. We're talking about like creation with AI, and hearing Dr. Amadeus talk about like the effort that he put into it. So the Copyright Office has actually issued guidance, and like if nothing else, and you want to read about like, hey, as a creator, if I want to start exploring with AI tools, like what are the things I need to think about to get protection still, that's something that's going to be worth reading. It's not very long, and it really lays out how they are thinking right now of issuing registrations. So the way copyright law works in the US is that you don't have to register your copyright to exercise your protection or exercise your rights of like being able to distribute. It affixes it attaches when your expression is affixed to a tangible medium, right? So when you like write a song and it's in sheet music, when you write a book and it's on the page, then you have copyright protection for that work. You don't have to do anything else if you don't want to. You do have to register before you bring a lawsuit against somebody else. And so the interesting thing is there have been so many questions about people using AI and what can they do to protect it. And the Copyright Office has said, well, we will not protect something if it does not have a human author. We have always wanted to protect, we can consider authors as being human, right? And so people have been applying for copyright registration for things where they just use lots of prompting. And it was interesting when Dr. Armades was talking about that, because you talk about energy, some of the arguments that they have is like, well, I wrote 600 prompts. I prompted, when it came back, I fixed it.
It
I was
is
doing
work.
all this stuff. It is work,
It's
right?
work.
Writing one prompt is work, let alone like doing a whole bunch, right? So is this not like, how is this different from me using a camera, for example, right? And so I'm going to read another quote that I thought was helpful. I really like from the Copyright Office. They said they did not consider somebody who's purely making things off of prompting, the output of that prompt, as being something that was created by a human, because they said prompts are like instructions to a commissioned artist. They identify what the prompter wants to have depicted, but the machine has determined how those instructions are implemented in its output. And so I thought, to me, that was really clear of like what you're telling it to do and what you're actually getting. And the idea is that the human does not have control over the output. It is not like using a camera and taking a photograph where the photographer has to like do the composition and make the arrangement and knows what it's going to look like at the end. The Copyright Office says, actually, when you tell me make a picture of X, you have no idea what's going to come out, right? So it's like me telling someone, draw a portrait of me. And so it has told people that is not enough. That's not to say that if you get something back and you modify and you edit, you rearrange those photos, right? You can protect that layer. It's not an all or nothing determination, but the underlying portion of it is not going to be protected. So like you have your arrangement of like panels into a comic book, that particular arrangement, that particular ordering, that could be protected. Someone wants to copy one of those individual photos, maybe not so much. So I think that is an interesting thing to think about when people are using these tools of like, hey, at what point have I kind of turned over my creative process, the things that are supposed to be expected from an artist, to a machine? And I think the idea right now is that like until humans have enough control over the exact output that's coming out, that output itself is probably not protectable under copyright.
All right. Wow. All right. I want everybody to just take a deep breath. Right. My mind was blown several ways there. And yes, I think your recommendation was to read the copyright. Yeah. Read it. Go check it out. It sounds like there's a lot that we can glean from that. I think I've been getting instruction now that we should move into the Q&A from the audience.
No, I'm so sorry. You had
no
like
worries.
An ethics question, and I'm so sorry.
We will. If you as you answer a question, just like throw it in there, All right.
All right. We want to thank everyone for submitting questions. We have plenty of them. So one of the questions we have is, as artificial intelligence becomes part of branding, music, video, education, and business content, how can small businesses protect their intellectual property without limiting innovation? Any thoughts?
I guess in what way? Like, where is the small business in that question?
I don't know whose question it is, so. Anybody in here?
Is the person here that asked that?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Am I good? I mean, sorry. Am I allowed to? I know I'm the moderator. I don't know about protecting intellectual property, but I would also say go to market, like get there. I think traction is important, and so getting stuck in sort of like perfecting and protecting. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. 1-800 King is not a lawyer. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so I'll provide your Arrow King's lawyer backup, actually. So like that is an argument, I think, to our point we were talking about a little bit earlier. That is a real thing that people balance, right? If we're talking about like the small business being the business, like we want to put out a bunch of like marketing collateral. The question you have to ask yourself is probably two major questions there. It's like, one, how important it is that this is something that is IP protectable, right? Maybe you don't care. Maybe if your biggest competitor comes and copies that exact set of marketing materials, maybe that's okay with you. And it's more important for you to go out there and market than for you to be able to protect this one particular like set of marketing collateral, right? Because that's what you're really giving up, when you are not getting IP protection, is the fact that if someone else were to sue you for like, or if someone else were to do it, you can't sue them for it because it's like it's not protectable. The other thing is also looking into and making sure that what you are spitting out is not going to infringe someone else, so that which is also like a different thing. A lot of models are trying to put guardrails around being able to put out output that looks like something else, but at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the users, and they say that in all their terms, to double check that. If you end up putting something out that looks just like someone else's branding, and they do have copyright protection because they did hire a marketing team to do that by hand, you might be in a situation where, yeah, you're first to market, but maybe you're like possibly facing liability.
Great, thank you. So the next question that we have here is, so this is kind of funny. So I think this might be for you, Amadeus. What do you think of Drake's tailor-made freestyle featuring AI Tupac and AI Snoop Dogg?
Dang.
I think my face
Says it all.
said it all. But with some of these, not except for Tupac, many recipes, for some of these to be my colleagues and friends, I'll stay neutral. But yeah, I'll
Leave it there. All right, we have a question for Ari. Ray, the self-image you promoted with adjectives. Can you describe more how you see AI's responses as reflecting our behavior?
There was one that stuck out that where I used poor, and it both aged me but also made me look sad. And so there are moments where I'm wondering, how is that word being translated semantically, emotionally? Like, how does it understand the idea of poor? Is it financial or is it emotional poor? There was another one, and I created this in 2022. There was another one where I used programmer, which I am, and it translated me into this white man, so changing my gender and my race. And it reflected the data set at the time of being a very Western-centered data set, even though at the time there were more Indians or Chinese programmers in the world than there were US-based. So those were moments where it really kind of showed me, for one, the programmer one, I wouldn't have, I wasn't shocked at that, but it was very revealing of, yeah, this is really a reflection of a very particular culture, group of people that we've labeled as AI as if it's universal. And that's what a lot of my research and work is to we really need to acknowledge that this is not a universal, objective truth. It's a very cultural specific idea of what reality is.
Can I?
Yep.
What year was this? Was 2022, so it was, I think, after Hidden Figures, yeah.
I wanted to touch on zombification. The use of AI and zombification are like enacting people who are deceased but whose style exists there and bringing them forward as an ethical matter. I think this even needs more reverence and examination and sort of like ways and protocols around how artists decide to bring people into the fore without checking with the states or even just checking the Bible and that. So I know that was
well said.
You know what I mean? Okay. Sorry.
There is something to that of, I mean, like we're all grappling with what the ethics are. So we're all using it, many of us privately, and the ways that I use it privately, sometimes I'm like, is this okay? Like, am I doing something okay? But this most recent time, I think last night or this week, when I wrote this essay, I gave it the essay to this AI tool and asked it to give me, I said, act as if I gave this, someone sent this essay to this person in an email and gave no other context. How would they reply? And I did it through different lenses, maybe like Malcolm X or like different political leaders. But then I also did it through a chair of an anthropology department at a high-level university. And it would do the people that have died, but it didn't want to do the person that was alive. It felt it was too inappropriate. Like it stopped it before I could do it, which I was really relieved by, of like how it's creating its own guardrails, even though we haven't collectively created that. But it is okay with the zombie kind of idea. So internally, there is a different relationship versus creating this external tool from a perspective of someone that's dead.
And also just publishing it to the world, right? Like you doing what you're doing in the in your own.
corner,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Yeah.
different than. All right, sorry. Back to you.
Okay, so we have two questions that I think are pretty similar, so I'll ask them. I think they're more maybe for Vicky. When a creator uses artificial intelligence as a tool, but the concept, direction, editing, and final creative decisions come from the human, what level of human contribution is required for the work to be legally protected? But in that, let me give you the second portion from somebody else's question that I thought was similar. They wanted to know whether or not there was an actual percentage, right? So is there a percentage of the work that has to be done by AI and the human for the human to get credit or ownership? What is the percentage?
That question was written by an AI. For sure. I just wanted to put that out there.
I don't know. I would like
yeah.
to meet whoever.
I'm just kidding.
Well, so the thing is that it doesn't, because it's not all or nothing, what it does is separate it into elements, right? And I think if you're trying to copyright the final work, it's going to look at who made the final work ultimately. And it's determined very case by case, right? You submit a registration, it actually asks you now on the registration to disclaim or like identify what parts were developed or how you used AI, and it will go through and try to figure that out. So, there is, like I said, like if AI starts it and you modify it, the modifications might be protectable, the underlying portion is not. So it looks like right now the Copyright Office is trying to identify what parts were mostly made by AI versus what parts were made by the human. On the flip side, I think one thing that it said that should be like okay in a lot of cases, and again, like it's really going to be exactly what happened in that one particular circumstance, is if you have AI start you out like an outline of something or help you with like brainstorming, but you as a human, you're executing on all of that, you're really in control of the expression of the ideas and what that looks like in the output, then that shouldn't stop you from protecting the output itself. So it's like if you are registering something, what are you registering? Is it like a picture? Well, like where did you stop and where does the AI stop? And like wherever the AI is solely contributing to, that's the part that's going to be difficult to register. So it's not like after like 30%, then all of it is. It's just like anything that is 100% you, that's protectable, and anything that's 100% AI is not going to be protectable.
So maybe you can answer part to this other question that came in, which says, what should entrepreneurs, educators, and creators document during their creative process to prove that an AI-assisted work still contains their original human authorship?
As much as you can. So actually that's actually an excellent question, and a thing that I should have mentioned that we do tell people internally, even with entrepreneurs when they're doing coding, like write down like what did you use AI for and what do you use humans for? So when we talk like clients through like, diligence processes, like do you have human review? Like you have some AI starts the code, but do you review the code? How many people review it, right? Like how much of it is changed afterwards? And so anything that you can have to document that, to say like, hey, all AI did was this and everything I did afterwards was me, like that's only gonna be more helpful for you.
Thank you. I think this next question might be a little bit for Ari. What are the first steps someone should take to start using AI professionally, especially if they come from a creative field like photography or content creation?
I would say just jump in. We were even talking about that in the green room of like the best way to learn is just to get in the tool and make stuff and see how it works and try different things and push it to limits. And play around with it. It's good to know what you are aiming for, so you have some direction. Like, this is how I want to use it. These are the kind of people I want to share it to, so you can use the right tools that will help you do that in the best way. But the best way is just to play around with it and see how it works.
But read the terms of service first before you do. There are some platforms that are trying to be much more creator protective, right? They won't train on creator data. If they do train on creator data, they'll compensate. So like, if that's something that you're really worried about, you're going to put in something that could be really precious to you, like try to seek out the ones that have those kind of protections. Read your terms of service.
Okay, this next question I believe might be focused more towards Amadeus. What do you think of the remix culture around the use of CapCut software, but also can AI understand culture? What can humans do that AI can't replicate?
That's pretty good.
You gotta use the mic.
Yeah, use it. Here, grab it.
That's sorry. So can you give me the first?
He got
part?
comfortable. Put the mic down.
Listen, I'm learning. I'm in school right now. This is the first time I ever paid attention to school, like for real, for real. I used to be talking. Can you give me the first part of that question again, please, Doctor?
Yeah. So what do you think of the remix culture around the use of CapCut software? And then the second part was, can AI understand culture? What can humans do that AI can't replicate?
So two things on that. What is CapCut software? Because I don't know. So just to help define that. And then I think the second question is probably broad. We can open that up.
Yep. Do you want me to explain it, or do you guys know? Okay. Yep. No. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I just know how to use it, but
Okay, so I was just gonna say CapCut is one of the softwares. So if you've ever been on, let's say, TikTok, it allows you to take a video and it recreates using music and other, I guess, animations that allow you to kind of recreate something. So that's what CapCut is.
yeah, I love CapCuts, by the way. So basically, if I was creating content, like walking in the building, walking in the library, it's so grand and so monumental. And, I got video of the room before you amazing individuals walked in. So I'll put a video and create a reel using CapCuts to make it nice and move swiftly. So I love I'm definitely a user of CapCuts. I have no issues with the remixing part. I've gotten remixed a few times. It is actually pretty hilarious and pretty funny. So I don't really get caught up in that from a negative sense or feeling like, it gets a little weird there. In regards to AI and human nature and just the vibes, I mean, you pretty much know my take on that. But at the end of the day, if it's using our feels and our vibes and our styles and our sounds, it's kind of using who we are and what we are. So that's kind of how I feel about it. I don't know if anyone feels differently.
I mean, that's a lot of my research too. It does a really good job of replicating the aesthetics of culture, whether it's like music, sound, or even if you use a chat-based tool of recreating someone's style and using the vernacular of that culture. It's really successful at that. Yeah, but there's also a branch of work that I've been building called incomputable intelligence, of this idea of, again, what I was talking about earlier, of it is a moment where we have to reckon with how much do we want to give it and how good do we want to get it to be. And so it's thinking about what parts of our culture, ways of being, do we want to share with it so it can train and be able to replicate it, when we also are understanding that it's not necessarily in our power. And there's also just elements of being a human and a sentient being that is just not computable. So it again is this like branding of an all-knowing God that's computational, but it's really a very limited idea of what it means to engage with the world.
I mean, I think we're also dealing with, like, language is such a reductive form of representing experience. If you tried to explain what was happening in this room using language, it would take so much. And we smell each other, we see each other, subtle body languages, there's so much that I love this notion of what's uncomputable. Incomputable, my bad. Copyright, don't mess that up. But I love, like, I think that's the space of the squishiness that I think hopefully we lean into as humans is realizing like there's so much more, and that the machines can kind of try to flatten us to the numbers and then put the representation out, but being together is what matters. Are we?
Quick question for Adi.
Oh,
Right? So, like James Brown's drummer, there's a certain groove, there's a certain swing that he's using and the patterns that he's playing. Are we saying, and this is the human part, right? Are we saying that if that AI can possibly create that exact feeling?
Perfectly.
Oh, I'm out of here.
it's a pattern. It's a pattern, though, right?
But it's like it's just not a pattern. It's like it's how it's played. There's a funkiness to it that no other drummer was able to emulate. So like that's scary. Oh, I don't know.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much to our wonderful panelists, Ari, Vicky, Amadeus, our moderator, Errol, for such an engaging conversation. Thank you to you all for showing up and asking those thought-provoking questions. As I mentioned, we are hosting 8 of these events, and the next one is Parenting in AI. That will be interesting. That is at the Tompkins Square branch on East 10th. You can register for that event now by going to the link on the handouts. We also have the flyer outside. We have also posted all the way up till our 7th panel, so if you want to register for any of those, see what they are and where the locations are, you can do that. And I hope that you join us for the rest of our conversation about AI series. I'd like to thank Women Tech Exchange, their wonderful staff, for helping us. I'd like to thank our dedicated NYPL staff who helped make tonight possible. Richard Jones, Cameron Begum, Leah Stern, Louisa Tatum, Heather Dutiel, Luelle Sala, Jasmine Murphy, the SASB staff, security, facilities, our comms team, and so many more. If you can, I'm going to go to the next screen. We really would appreciate if you just kind of scan that and take the survey. What it's going to do, like I told you earlier, we are creating AI content that we can use to help train anybody who wants to learn about AI or just get educated about it. And that's from every perspective, from the small business owner to the job seeker. Whatever it is you need to learn about AI, we are trying to bring that to you all for free. And so if you can complete that survey, that will help us to make sure we get you what you want and what you need with that. And I hope you'll stop and get a library card while you're here. It opens up a world of resources in our 92 branches across New York City. And thank you and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.